الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. صلوات عليك برابر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many ayat of Quran commands the Prophet to remind the people, reminding issues they already know about it. And this is part of the nature of human society. They have to be reminded of things again and again. Even if you look at when you travel on the plane, even those who are frequent flyers, still they have to listen to the instructions, what is to be done in case of emergency. So this is part of it. It's a very normal. When you look at, for example, the police having their campaign during the holiday seasons about don't drink and drive. Doesn't apply to the Muslims, inshallah. But it's a message which is repeated again and again and again. And so this issue of repeating is part of the Quran, part of the Seerah of Ahlul Bayt. That is the norm in human society. This being the last Thursday of the month, where I normally talk about the Masail of Fiqh, wanted to dedicate a few minutes that we have to remind ourselves about some of the common questions I get about Namaz Jamaat. We've talked about it in detail just about 2 years ago, I think, but still, we get these questions again and again. I've just selected 5 to 6 questions and we'll go through it very quick. Number one, about the importance of Namaz Jamaat itself. We have 2 formats of namaz. Either we do it alone, furada, or we do it in a congregational form known as Jamaat. Out of these 2, of course, Jamaat is the preferred one. And it happens sometimes that, you will see that when we talk about the Jamaat prayer is actually the only religiously, recognized method of expressing our link with the community. That is why the prayer is known as Jamaat. This is which brings the people together. This is where we come to know one another as members of the same community. And so it has very, great importance in our teachings, in our history, and in our culture. The question that I get sometimes is that, suppose I come to the mosque and I see it's a time of Namaz Jamaat. It is the time of Namaz, and the Jamaat is going on. But then there is an individual standing all alone at the back, a little bit removed away from the congregation, doing the Furada Namaz. What is the status of that individual doing Furada Namaz while there is Namaz Jamaat there, right in the same masjid? Now, if it's a huge masjid, sometimes you go to different places for ziyarah, that's a different thing. But you're talking about, our own normal masajid, where things are very visibly felt when an individual, does the namaz alone. We are not talking about occasionally, emergency situations or an individual has to really move back to the office very quick and therefore to do their namaz furada quickly and go away. That's a different issue. Here we are talking about somebody, regularly does the same thing. What happens to him? According to our mujtahideen, where they say that if this amounts to a political statement that an individual would like to publicly say that I don't consider the Imam Jamaat to be adil, or maybe my makhraj is better than him, therefore I'll not recite behind him. So if that furada namaz of an individual is considered as a statement of questioning the adalat of the Imam of the Jamaat, or the competence of the Imam of Jamaat to lead the prayers, then according to some maraja, including the famous name that I can remember is Marhum Ayatollah Khomeini, the namaz of that furada would be batil. According to others, and we don't want to go into the names, they say the namaz is still okay, but that act entails a guna and a sin by itself. And so keep in mind that we are talking about importance given to the Jamaat. It's not that individual who is leading the prayer. It's an insult of the community. It's a statement against the Jamaat itself. And so if somebody genuinely thinks that this person is not adil, or has genuine problems with the makhraj, for example, then the solution would be you still go out of the respect for the community and the congregation, join physically in the Jamaat, but do your furada niyyat. And when it comes to the time of surahs, recite your surahs yourself, but silently. That's very important. Even it's Maghrib or Isha or Subha namaz, where if a person is doing the namaz by himself, then he has to recite the surahs loud. In that format, you have to do the surah silently. So you would get the sawab for it, and your namaz will not become a statement of insulting the integrity of the person leading the namaz. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. It should be in a way that even when that person is doing this surah silently, the person on the side should not hear that qaraat. Otherwise the whole purpose of joining there is gone, because you are still making that statement. So remember that this might look a very simple mas'ala, but this is an important mas'ala, because Islam is not a religion of individuals. Islam is a religion of a community. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. The second question we get many times is that if I join the namaz Jamaat, and in the row that I'm standing, or in front of me, there is a non-baligh child, is that non-baligh child a sufficient link for me to the Jamaat? The condition is not that the person should be baligh to be connected, to the Jamaat. The condition is to be mumayyiz. For example, on Friday prayers, we get students from the school who join in, and some of them are not baligh. And so the question comes up, if you are connected to the Jamaat through that child, is that a valid connection? The condition is not bulugh for connection. The condition is that the child should be mumayyiz. Mumayyiz means a child who knows how to do the prayers, the basic rulings of the prayers, and he knows what is the right and the wrong thing in doing the prayers. In Urdu and Gujarati also sometimes we say tamiz nahi hai, tamiz or mumayyiz. Mumayyiz is a person who has tamiz. Means they are able to distinguish what is right and what is wrong. So if you have a child who is not baligh, but that child is mumayyiz, then that is a sufficient link to you in the namaz Jamaat. Of course, if you have more than one, it is always better to separate them and have an adult in between, because they would have the tendency of, playing around, looking at one another. So that's a more practical issue. But as far as the connection is concerned, bulugh is not the condition. To be mumayyiz is sufficient. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. Sometimes we have people who are not from the Shia community. they join in Friday prayers, or at other times also. And for some of our people who might not have done the Namaz Jamaat with other Muslims, they get confused. Oh, the person through whom I was connected to the Jamaat was a Sunni or a Bohri, Shia. Is my Jamaat valid? Well, for connection in Namaz Jamaat, to be Muslim is sufficient. They don't have to be Shia, Isna Ashari. So even if they are not Shia, doesn't matter, or if they are Shia, not Isna Ashari, as far as the connection in Namaz Jamaat is concerned, that is sufficient for us. One more issue which we have discussed this before, but I would like to just emphasize this point. What about in the Namaz Jamaat, even in let's first line, I stand there, and when the Iqamat happens, then I realize that the person through whom I am connected to the Imam is doing his namaz in a sitting form. He cannot stand up because of his illness or weakness or whatever. Or it's a chair. A person doing his namaz in his chair. There is no problem in that connection. Whether the person is sitting on the ground, who is connected, through whom you are connected to the Jamaat, or that person is doing the namaz on the chair. That wouldn't be a problem at all. However, it is better. It is better for such a person to always go into the second line, second row, or to the end of the saf. That would be more, convenient, and it will not create anxiety in the minds of people who do not know the mas'ala. Of course, the Imam Jamaat cannot be sitting. ये नहीं है कि मौलाना की तबीयत ठीक नहीं है तो बैठ के नमाज पढ़ा दे. It doesn't work that way. If it is a whole Jamaat of, let's say, wheelchair people or disabled people, and then you have the Imam who is also on a wheelchair or sitting, then that's okay. But you can't have the Imam who is jalis sitting and the Ma'mumin are standing. That wouldn't work. So when it comes to the Imam of Jamaat, he has to be a person who can do the namaz normally. A very frequent situation that we see is the issue of musafir. In 4 rakat namaz, in Zuhr Asr most of the time, or in Isha, the musafir is there, especially in the first line. Then what happens? There are three situations. And let me, explain this very clearly. After the second rakat, the musafir will do his salam and end his namaz, because his namaz is 2 rakat only. Then he stands up and says Allahu Akbar and joins in the third rakat. If he does that, then your connection is okay. If you're connected to the Jamaat through that musafir, if he finishes his qasr namaz, which is 2 rakat, and then stands up to continue the namaz, and joins in the third rakat, that connection is okay. Or, in second situation, the musafir did his 2 rakat namaz, and after salam, he moves away from that place. Even though there is a gap there of one person, it is still okay. Your connection is still there. If the musafir moves away after the second rakat that he has finished. But if that musafir, the third situation, ends his namaz safar, 2 rakat namaz, and after salam he's just sitting there, doesn't join in to do his another namaz, or doesn't even move away, then he becomes a barrier. Then those who are connected to the Jamaat through him, they will have to change their niyat from Jamaat to Furada and do the rest of the namaz in the Furada form. Let me just repeat this. If the musafir finishes the qasr namaz and then stands up to do another namaz, so joins in again, then the connection will continue. Or if he, after finishing the qasr namaz, moves away from that place, even though there would be a gap, still your connection would be valid. But if the musafir, after the 2 rakat namaz, sits there, then that will become a barrier and your connection with Jamaat will be broken. For your namaz to be valid, you have to do the niyat of furada and continue your namaz in the furada form for the rest of the 1 or the 2 rakat that you would have. Salawat alaykum. As a practical, rule for musafir, it is always better to go into the second line or at the end of the line and not sit in the first row, because that creates problems. Wherever the musafir is your link to the Jamaat, this will happen mostly in the first rakat. But if they are in the second or the third row, then you have connection from the right or the left or from the front. So that wouldn't be that much of a problem. Salawat alaykum. One question I got recently, where an individual, a learned person in religion, did the takbir soon after the imam, although the 1 or 2 rows before him had not yet done takbir. And somebody came to him and he said, your namaz is batil. Amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al munkar is okay, but the style has to be polite. So he came to me to ask this question. I said, no, your namaz is okay. Normally this perception is, and this is not bad thing to do, people think when the Imam Jamaat has done Takbiratul Ihram, then the first row should do it, and then the second will follow, and then the third will follow, and then fourth and fifth. And what happens then? When we have Jummah prayers with so many people here, if you go row by row, by the time I go to ruku, the last line is doing its takbir. The mas'ala doesn't say that in Takbiratul Ihram you have to go from one line to second and then third and fourth. No. As soon as the Imam of the Jamaat says Takbiratul Ihram, and you see that the people ahead of you in the various rows, if they are in the process of getting ready for the Jamaat, then you can do takbir. Your connection with the Imam in takbir is not through the sufuf, it goes directly. Okay, and so you don't have to wait for the line before, the saf before to do takbir before you can say it. Of course, that would be a good thing to happen, that as you feel like, okay, now the connection is established. Otherwise, I'm just bypassing all this sufuf. But that is not a requirement. As long as the people in the line ahead of you are in the state of getting ready for the namaz, you can say Takbiratul Ihram even if you are in the 5th or the 6th row of the Jamaat. Salawat alaykum. Ikbar salawat. The first mas'ala that I mentioned about, a person not believing in or is certain and he has religious basis to say this imam is not adil or his qaraat is not right, still out of the respect of the Jama'at, you have to still join in and do your furata niyat, and in that situation you will do the surahs silently, even if it is a jahri salat, where the surahs have to be done loudly. The same method would apply when you go for Jummah prayers or in the travelings. where the Imam of the Jamaat is not Shia Isna Ashari. If you look at the Risala of all our Shia Mujtahideen, when they talk about the conditions of the Imam of Jamaat, one of the conditions is that the fellow should be Shia Ithna Ashari. And you go to a place where the Imam is not a Shia Ithna Ashari. Again, out of the respect of the Ummah, out of the respect for the community, to promote this sense of, being connected to the global Ummah, you still go in, physically join with them, do the namaz with them, but the niyat and the rules of furada would apply. You will do your own surahs, but you will do it silently again. Because if you do it loudly, the whole purpose of, joining in would be defeated. Even if it means that sometimes, the Imam from that other mazhab, after Surah Al-Hamd would be reciting many, many long ayat, and your surah is ended, the second one, well, you just stand there. Do zikr. There's no problem in that situation to do zikr. Or just be silent until the time of ruku comes, then you join in the ruku. Because this issue of, maintaining that kind of unity is important in our faith and our madhab. Of course, we put this condition, especially when it comes to the Namaz-e-Jum'ah. The reason why Namaz-e-Jum'ah is not wajib aini during the ghaibat, because we believe that the Imam of Jum'ah should be either ma'soom himself or somebody specifically appointed by the ma'soom. The views that we have among mujtahideen goes from, in ghaibat, it's not even applicable at all, like Atullah Hakim marhum. During his time, you still had to do Zuhr with niyat of wajib. And you will do the Jummah with the niyat of qurbat. Raja'an lil matlubiyya, that was the term used those days. But majority of the mujtahideen believe that in the time of ghaibat, namaz al-Jummah is wajib takhiri. You have a choice between Jummah or Zuhr. Whatever you do, you will do with the niyat of wajib. Why do we have this emphasis about the qualities of Imam Jamaat? Especially in Namaz al-Jummah. Because if you look at history, Imam al-Jummah was normally appointed by the ruler of the time. If you lived, and you have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you didn't live during the days of Muawiyah. You'd be forced to go to Namaz al-Jummah appointed by his people. And with their bid'at of saying bad words about Amir al-Mu'mineen, in every khutbah would be there. And that is where you see people like Hujr bin Adi and others in Masjid Kufa would actually stand up and protest whenever they used abusive language against Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Friday khutbahs. And so this is the reason why we give so much importance to the position of Imam Jummah in the Shia fiqh. अगर आप जनाब हुजर के हालात को देखें, उनका मज़ार यकीनन जब आप शाम की ज़ियारत के लिए गए हैं और खुदावंद आलम उस मज़ार को महफूज रखे, इस सलफ़ी और वहाबी हज़रात जिनके जो अज़ाइम और प्लान्स हैं, वी डोंट नो क्या होगा वहाँ। लेकिन जनाब हुजर से ये बर्दाश्त नहीं होता था कि जब ज़ियाद बिन अबी अपने खुतबे में अमीर अल-मोमिनीन को बुरा भला कहता था, वो और उनके कुछ साथी जो है वो खड़े होकर एहतजाज करते थे, प्रोटेस्ट करते थे, और इसी बुनियाद पर इनको मुख्तलिफ इल्ज़ामात इन पर डाल के इनको अरेस्ट किया गया और शाम भेजा गया। दमिश्क में लाने से पहले आउटसाइड द सिटी मुआविया ने अपने ऑफिसर्स को कहा कि इन्हें ऑप्शन दो, और वो भी बहुत ही इस अंदाज से कि इनमें खौफ आ जाए। ये तकरीबन 5 से 7 लोग थे। इनसे पहले कहा गया अपनी कब्र खोदो खुदी। अब आप सोच लीजिए, खुद अपनी कब्र खोद रहे हैं, इज सेल्फ इंटिमिडेशन ऑफ द हाईएस्ट लेवल। उसके बाद कहा गया आपके साथ سامنے دو آپشن ہیں، یا تو تم اب ابو تراب کو برا بھلا کہو یا موت. دیٹس دی الٹرنیٹیوز. اور وہاں پر آپ دیکھیں ہم لوگوں کے لیے شیعہ ہونا آسان نہیں ہے. یہ کہنا ہے کہ ہم شیعہ علی ہیں ایک بات ہے، اپنے تشیع پر قائم رہنا امتحان اور ابتلا میں کچھ اور ہے. جناب حجر کی مثال کو آپ دیکھیں. ایک روایت جو ملتی ہے ان کے شہادت کے سلسلے میں وہ یہ ہے کہ جب وہ جلاد آیا سامنے کہ انہیں قتل کرے تو جناب حجر اس سے کہتے ہیں کہ ہماری آخری خواہش ہے. اور جلاد کے بھی کچھ ٹریڈیشنز ہوتے ہیں، اصول ہوتے ہیں کہ آخری خواہش کو انکار نہیں کرتے ہیں. اس نے کہا مجھے قتل کرنے سے پہلے میرا جوان بیٹا ہے انہوں میں، اسے بھی تم قتل کرنے والے ہو، لیکن ہم چاہتے ہیں کہ پہلے اسے قتل کرو پھر ہمیں. جلاد آگے بڑھتا ہے، جناب حجر کے بیٹے کو قتل کرتا ہے، لیکن وہ جناب حجر کے پاس جب آیا ہے تب اب سوال خود جلاد نے کیا ہے کہ یہ انسانی فطرت کے خلاف بات ہے. باپ جو ہے اپنی جان کو قربان کرتا ہے اپنے بیٹے کے لیے، لیکن آپ نے جو خواہش کی ہے، آپ سوچ لیں یہ سٹینڈرڈ جو جناب حر نے تشیع کے لیے اسٹیبلش کیا ہے، کیا ہم اس کے قریب بھی جا سکتے ہیں کہ نہیں؟ جناب حجر بن عدی کہتے ہیں کہ دیکھو انسان کے لیے مرنا جو ہے تلوار سے اتنا آسان نہیں ہے. میرے دل میں یہ خوف تھا کہ یہ نہ ہو کہ جب تلوار کی چمک اس کے سر پر آئے تو میرے بیٹے کے زبان پر علی کے خلاف کوئی جملہ آ جائے، اپنی جان کو بچانے کے لیے تقیتاً کچھ کہہ دے. اس اطمینان کے ساتھ ہم مرنا چاہتے ہیں کہ میرا بیٹا بھی اسی راہ پر آخر وقت تک قائم اور دائم رہا. حضرت حسین یہ تشیع کی علامت ہے. اور یقیناً اس مثال کو جب آپ دیکھتے ہیں تب کربلا کا وہ جوان یاد آتا ہے کہ جب بابا سے اس نے پوچھا ہے کہ بابا یہ جملہ کیوں آپ نے کہا ہے. وہاں اطمینان کو دیکھیں. حسین سے جب علی اکبر نے سوال کیا ہے اور جب حسین نے کہا کہ میں نے ایک منادی کو دیکھا ہے عالم رؤیا میں جو کہہ رہا ہے کہ قافلہ موت کی طرف جا رہا ہے اور اب موت ہماری طرف آ رہی ہے، اس وقت علی اکبر کے زبان پر صرف ایک جملہ تھا، یا ابتا لسنا علی الحق، بابا کیا ہم حق پہ نہیں ہیں. اس اطمینان کے ساتھ حسین نے اکبر کو بھیجا تھا. اس اطمینان کی وہ منزل ہے کہ جب جیت کی آئے ہے اور بابا پانی سے سیراب نہ کر سکے، حسین کے چہرے پر غم کے جو آثار تھے اس تصویر کو اکبر جو ہے آخر وقت میں بھول نہ سکے، اس لیے سینے میں برچی کے یہ پھل لگا ہوا تھا، لیکن پھر بھی آواز دیتے ہیں بابا آپ پر آخری سلام ہو. اور اس کے بعد ایک جملہ کہا ہے کہ بابا میرے جد آ چکے ہیں، انہوں نے مجھے سیراب کر دیا ہے اور آپ کے لیے بھی ایک کاسا لے کے آئے ہیں. یہ اس لیے تھا کہ بابا کو مطمئن کر دے بابا آپ غمگین نہ ہو کہ بیٹا اب آپ کا پیاسا نہ رہا. الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ای منقلب ینقلبون. خداوند اس قلب قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما، امام کے ظہور میں تعجل فرما. ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم.